But that means we've got some gameplay we're going to be jumping into, though, for a Master Yi matchup. We've got Clyde, who we saw, who is sporting that dazzling arena, and I'm excited to see what ESR is going to be playing for us on his version for Master Yi. But I must make you answer, Aaron, if you had to pick one of those two variants, if ESR's is this kind of mid-range version, do you think there's a favorite?
Yeah, I would really have to lean in the Dazzling Aurora build. A lot of times in games like this, the important thing is being just one step larger than your opponent. If you're too slow compared to them, you're going to get run over. They're going to take battlefields and your score points, you're going to lose. If you're just a little bit bigger and you both score points at roughly the same pace, your deck being larger and getting that little bit more value should be able enough to lock them out.
Absolutely. As we see the double Vile Moss lair coming in here for both of these players, I think that's a pretty safe bet. You know, again, we're at open deck lists, at least for both of these players, but we've immediately now been, our answers are given. ESR playing that kind of mid-range version versus Clyde, who we saw earlier today on this Dazzling Aurora variant. And it was a very close game. Went all the way to game 3 versus a Misfortune playing Dazzling Aurora as well, and just being to barely able to survive it out, because cards like this, Zonia's Hourglass, being able to rebuy one of these giant units that you're playing off the top.
Yeah, not the start Clyde is especially excited about. Much happier to have something like a Find Your Center, get that rune, draw that card, kind of race as quickly as possible to those big monsters, where ESR doing definitely what they want to do, starting with this small unit, getting to score some points, has to get ahead so that if something like a Dazzling Aurora does come down, they have the potential to close the game out before Clyde takes over.
Followed up by a Kiana, so no 2 units here, but, you know, as long as we start getting units onto the board to get these 2 points per turn for ESR, that's the pace you're kind of looking for when, as you watch the Dazzling Aurora deck kind of set up and ramp, like with this Catalyst of Aeons, to get to the point that they want to be at in the game.
Well, Catalyst of Aeon means you're not too sad to not have a Find Your Center. You're already at 7 runes. Next turn, you're going to be at 9, the magic number for playing that Aurora. And even if you don't have something like an Aurora, you still have access to Deadbloom Predators, backed up by this Hourglass, or the Master Yi from the Champion Zone, backed up by a couple pump spells.
Absolutely. Catalyst of Aeons of our own, though, from ESR, which you do see a couple of times being played in this kind of mid-range version, just to get yourself to that point in the game where you're allowed to play your own Deadbloom Predators or White Flame Protectors from your hand. Going for the draw here on the Conquer effect of the Kiana. Could have chose to channel, but we played a Catalyst, right? So we already got our 2 channels that we needed.
Yeah, again, big number for the build not playing Dazzling Aurora. 8 is the most expensive card you're going to be playing. Going to have 9 next turn, potentially able to play an 8-drop, plus have another trick, On Guard, Charm, Defy, something of that nature.
Big turn here. Does Clyde actually have it as we go to the 9 runes? Because if not, you just kind of have to feel like you have to play the units straight out from your hand if they're stuck there. Honed Yi coming in from the Champion Zone, though, instead of a Dazzling, going to contest against this Clockwork Keeper.
Yeah, and if you had the Dazzling Aurora there, you're certainly going to be slamming it. There's no way there are any answers to that coming this game with how early it is. But not having that, having the ramp, having to play a much more fair mid-range game of Clyde's own, similar to what ESR is probably about to do in return.
Yeah, pass back, of course, get the hold with the Kiana. Obviously didn't attack into it because you would have just been trading, but you do have your own Zonia's Hourglass that would have been able to bring your Yi back. But as we pass going into it, I think this could be, you know, an opportunity, like you said, where we go that ramp earlier, putting us to that 9. Deadbloom plus On Guard would be nice to do here against the Yi, but you are still staring across 2 readied runes from Clyde.
You brought up the fact that the Master Yi would have traded with the Kiana if they go in, and I think that's a really important point for the Master Yi mirror. Both players are much better at defending and holding than they are attacking. Normally, the attacker is so favored, especially in matchups like Kaisa, where there's so many big Accelerate units and Thousand-Tailed Watchers. And here, there's some of that, and there are combat tricks, but if you're able to hold up your tricks, that +2 from the Legend just makes combat super painful for your opponent. They have to risk so much going in because the numbers just are almost never going to be in their favor.
Find Your Center, channel draw. Pit Rookie coming in, going to give a buff to this Kiana, make it a little bit more sticky onto the board. Ooh, we even have one of those exclusive Riot buffs. I wish I had some of those. Those look so beautiful. Star Wars Portal then coming down as well.
Don't press your luck.
That's not what that was, but I do think they are gorgeous. And I'm excited to see just pieces like that in general being nice little fun giveaways from when, you know, are interacting with, you know, developers of the game.
Clyde didn't have a really big play last turn or wanted to use the Yi and hold up some protection. I was curious if there was another big one here, but it does seem like there's this Dead Bloom Predator ready to pick a fight. Obviously, still no Dazzling Aurora. I think that would have been the play here. But, you know, sometimes you don't need the Aurora if you just draw enough big monsters and have some good early ramp.
Yeah, 7 might to 8, even with the Yi buff, and it looks like we don't necessarily have a trick or afraid that if we use ours, it'll just be reciprocated by Clyde, so the Conqueror is going to go through.
Yeah, I think I was able to get a glimpse of ESR's hand there. It looks like things like Find Your Center and other units, not any protection spells. A Charm available, but Clyde has both the battlefields and units are much larger over there.
Wow, even paying and getting a bonus hidden card here for Clyde can only mean that we've got probably double Zonia's Hourglass. Maybe there's a Pocket Cub that we could talk about, but I doubt so in this Dazzling Aurora variant.
Yeah, this is a pretty face-up hidden card. The good thing about Hourglass, though, is it is hidden. You can choose when you're ready to try and protect something. So if you're valuing the Dead Bloom Predator more than the Yi, which it looks like we are because we hid the Hourglass there, so you don't have to flip it until that Dead Bloom Predator starts to get pressured.
Eight energy here, using for a White Flame Protector. It looks like it was going on top of that Pit Rookie, giving it the extra 8 might for the turn, which is going to allow, again, only really for a trade on that Dead Bloom, but we do have the option to attack into the Honed Yi instead.
I would imagine we're going to get that Honed Yi attack here. Again, there's a Charm in ESR's hand, which means if you're able to fight that Master Yi and win the fight, you're then able to either Charm it again, because it's going to live from the Hourglass, or attempt to Charm the Dead Bloom out of that battlefield.
Discipline coming through, going to draw us a card. Unless this gets defied, if there's one in the hand, as I can kind of see, looks like that's not going to be the case here. But going to 10 and 10 means there's just the trade. It's basically as if you went into the Dead Bloom, but that would have been way more of a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, this situation is a pretty big disaster, too. ESR can take that battlefield now, but that unit's pretty small. Not able to charm either of Clyde's units here. Just in a situation where things are pretty tough, I think there's maybe a first mate in the hand. Doing that and moving in the White Flame Protector and then doing a charm possibly gives you the ability to remove one of these units in play and start to catch up and get these points in this hold before Clyde's bigger in-game comes online fully.
That seems like a great play to me, and it's one of the benefits when you are playing this kind of mid-range version is that you get cards like First Mate because, you know, you don't want to be playing cards like that in the Dazzling variant. So White Flame's going to go in, still get that Conquer up for ESR, going to 5, and it looks like that Charm is coming through here to try and get it off the battle, get it off the 8 plus the 10, but Discipline does give the +2, but of course we have the Zonia's Hourglass that we are allowed to activate, and it's just going to save itself from there. Discipline wearing off as the unit was then recalled.
Yeah, this is a turn where, do you get rid of both Hourglasses? Now if things die, we're at least ahead. But I think that was a lot of ESR's kind of power there. It does have the White Flame Protector in a battlefield that's going to ask a little bit of Clyde to get through with that Wuju Blademaster. But a White Flame for a White Flame, trade for a trade. This Yi is about to go to town.
Am I getting bamboozled? This is a Dazzling deck, right? I mean, I remember him playing them last time he was on here, but we are just raw playing all of the units that we end up drawing for the turn, and they're just as good as if you play them from the top of the deck, then from your hand, of course. And another hidden card here. A third Zonia's Hourglass off the get-go in game 1.
Yeah, it's pretty massive, these Hourglasses this game. I had mentioned at the start, Clyde maybe not super happy about the turn 1 Hourglass, but when backed with the Catalyst of Aeons and still able to play the big monsters ahead of time, it is worth a whole nother big monster. This Hourglass is the same as saying, I'm going to spend 1 power to get a whole 8 might unit later.
I love it too when, you know, cards like White Flame Protector not just give the +8 might when they come in, but it is still that 8 might body for later. And now it's going to be a rough situation for ESR because a play like that was exact. Because it's different where if it came off the Dazzling, the White Flame Protector is almost even a miss, right? Because it doesn't actually really do anything for you right away. Whereas when you play them from hand, that's where the full value comes from because you get to pick it and then swing with a unit.
Yeah, this is why people like the Master Yi Dazzling Aurora variant compared to something like Misfortune. The Misfortune deck's certainly more all-in with its units and its Aurora. You just don't have the same level of a power and ability to just play kind of a normal game. Part of that is having access to Find Your Center with Calm gives you more good ramp, and things like Ancient Hourglass make you a little bit more robust compared to Misfortune's really bursty, powerful in-games and things like Bullet Time.
There's that Find Your Center you talked about earlier. We finally are going to play it, and it is only cost 1, as both players are 3 away from the victory score. And it's going to draw us a card and channel. And now we are going to come tap out for 8. It looks like a dead bloom. Nope, white. Or Tasty Fable accelerated, makes the same math as well. And this at least allows us to attack a little bit more aggressively with multiple units. And then you still have some, extra resources coming if the Tasty Fable doesn't make it through.
Yeah, an on guard here from Clyde could be a pretty big blowout unless ESR has a trick in response. Just a Find Your Center, going to cycle that one. But the question is, do I care about this Master Yi? Clyde has another Zanya's Hourglass hidden almost certainly. So is that something I want to play here? Or do I value, say, this Yi is actually worth less than these 8 Might units?
Seems like we're probably going to end up flipping it up as the Master Yi just still counts as a very large body. Remember, taking a lot of the trade here means this Yi still has a lot of punching power when going against that first mate, even though ESR gets the conquer.
Yeah, Tasty Feyfolk does get to draw a card here. ESR really needs cards, really running low on resources, and Clyde just having way more numbers in play means the pressure is on ESR to find those answers.
Going to even keep the Yi back at home. White Flame moving up, going up to 7 for Clyde, and now all of a sudden, ESR is in dangerous territory. If there's anything that's like, oh, wait, Stalwart Poro. Now I'm so confused. He must be siding Dazzling Auroras and only playing a couple of low energy units because we definitely saw Dazzling Aurora earlier today.
Yeah, that's an interesting play pattern that I consider. If you're playing in these Aurora mirrors, having your own Auroras really strong, potentially boarding those in over these small units, really keeps your opponent on the toes. If they don't think you're Aurora in Game 1, they're probably not going to board in answers to Aurora in Game 2.
It's completely changed my mindset now that I've seen, a unit like the Star Wars Pearl come through because this entire time, I'm anticipating this Dazzling Aurora coming down. We knew that there's going to be a lot of ramp, a lot of these heavy costed units still coming through. And now it makes me excited for what the future of this match will look like and what Clyde decides to take each of them. But feeling still kind of in the driver's seat now that the Hone Yi from ESR is going in and swings through, that's still going to be Game 1 going over to Clyde as there's not really much else for ESR in the tank.
Yeah, ESR was able to find a couple disciplines and try and make a big play there and take over that battlefield, but Primal Strength is the pump spell to beat all pump spells, and that means Clyde gets to hold all the battlefields.
Into Game 2 we go. Of course, Clyde winning that Game 1. We've got Grove of the God Willow coming over from ESR, a tried and true favorite for a lot of these Master Yi decks because it's very good at holding points once you get onto them, but it's going to be highly contested versus the Obelisk of Power on the side of Clyde.
Turn 1, Find Your Center getting countered by the Defy. One of those things that Clyde obviously not super used to happening was just going to draw the card. Normally your Find Your Center just resolves, but if you are in ESR seat, slowing down Clyde seems like a prime directive for you. Your Defies, maybe not always at their best later. Cash that in now, really slow down. You're going to get to score some points and maybe get to hold that Grove of the God Willow and really get some card advantage going.
Absolutely. So our judges will sort it out. Of course, they'll take care of it and everything. But, Obelisk of Power, when I see that one, it makes me potentially think that we did side in the Dazzling Auroras, getting that extra advantage for trying to make the game, accelerate a little bit quicker. But my question to you is, what is ESR going to do in combat if we did side in those Dazzling Auroras and they might be coming? Because it is open decklist. That is an option that ESR is aware of happening.
Well, I think this is a type of play that's really committing to that, right? It is, okay, I'm willing to lose a rune to make sure you don't get the extra rune. I am afraid of your late game. You gave me this extra rune with the Obelisk of Power so I can play a unit and have a Defy up, and that's something I normally wouldn't get to do in this time of the game. But I'm willing to give up that Obelisk of Power. I think I need to get ahead, and this is the way of saying that. I will say in ESR's hand, looks like a lot of Catalyst of Aeons to get some more ramp. Not a lot of payoffs or action, so a lot of pressure on top decking some more units and things to play here to get ahead.
Looks like our judge is coming back, so we're going to get that resolution for what's going to resolve here, of course, and just trying to map our way out for the rest of this game for both of these players. I do like the Defy on, the Catalyst or the Find Your Center. Find Your Center to me feels a little better, denies that draw, but when I do think about it, stopping my opponent from channeling one rune right now, for me to have to pay the power cost on this Defy and recycling one, it's kind of like a similar exchange, you would think, almost.
It is a little similar. I'm giving up a card and a rune, stopping you from getting a card and a rune. There's a possibility this Defy isn't that relevant. Clyde has 4 runes from the Obelisk of Power, is going to get 2 each turn. That means on turn 3 is going to have 8 runes, which is enough to play all of the units that aren't Dazzling Aurora. So if Clyde doesn't happen to have that Dazzling Aurora, it's very reasonable that this 9th rune isn't that relevant. Maybe the Defy could have been used to win a combat later, but how that plays out in that prediction of Clyde's hand is something ESR has to make, and just saying, I need to make sure you Aurora 1 turn sooner if that's something in your hand, because if you do a quick one of those, I will not be winning.
I love that. Because sometimes when I'm the calm player, I feel like I never know if I'm making the right decision on, actually using it to counter those ramp spells. But it seems like we got the resolution that's going to be going on here from the judges is that we're going to get a judge shuffle. We saw the card that was going to be on top of our deck. Instead of, stopping the entire game and everything, we're just going to be like, well, let's put it back. You don't need that card. We know that it is specifically that one card, and we're going to be shuffling up the deck and resuming the play. That Find Your Center getting canceled here, and it looks like we're going to move on. Moving into the Grove, first contention and first point here for ESR, and a catalyst of their own to get and accelerate into the runes, which helps pay off for the Defy that we just paid for earlier.
Yeah, taking this Grove of the Godwill, as I said before, Pit Rookie there, probably going to try and hold and draw some cards. Clyde only at 6 runes, not really able to play any of the accelerated units, even the Master E at the Champ Zone, having to cycle a Discipline to find some more action to do.
The second one.
And again, just, getting through these loops, trying to find cards that are things you can play on the next turn. Gonna have 8 runes, always can play the Master E, but if you're at 8, you can't Master E plus Discipline, so you might as well try and find a more powerful play for the follow-up.
Yeah, just a cycle drawing kind of turn there for Clyde, which means you're going to give the hold away, which is the extra bonus draw for ESR, go to 2 points, and now it's time for ESR to really kind of solidify a board state.
Yeah, and that draw was super important. Their hand in the previous turn was a couple Catalysts and an On Guard. Not the most threatening thing on this board, so really did need to dig and find some action of what they could be doing. Now, plenty of runes. They could use the Master E and go into the second battlefield to put a ton of pressure and start trying to conquer. Potentially quite good against the Dead Bloom Predator because of the Wuju Blade Master Legend, meaning that is just a trade. And we just saw Clyde have to spend a bunch of their disciplines. So the odds of pump spells being able to break something like a Master E hold gets harder and harder.
Even bringing home the Pit Rookie, you already got the point, of course, take it off. And you really are kind of expecting something coming out from Clyde here on this next turn. So keep it safe, probably not going to get away with that hold anyway. And then, of course, the Honed going in on the Obelisk of Power for the 3rd point.
Yeah, you can see ESR there saying, like, okay, I could try and hold this Grove of the Godwillow, but I know you have the Master E. That can go in and eat it. And I think you will probably just go there anyway, because the odds of you breaking through my Master E at the Obelisk of Power are so low because I have the Legend bonus for this fight.
Absolute respect. I mean, you love it, right? Because ESR kept 1 up. After playing Clyde's own Master E, it's going to keep 1 up. So if it's answering just with On Guard versus On Guard, like, you're still going to lose that exchange. So it makes 100% sense.
Clyde once again hiding this Ancient Hourglass. This is the way that gonna get back ahead. Again, spending 1 power for the equivalent of a 6 might ganking unit. When you are just both on this resource game and casting these big things, you're kind of both only getting to play 1 a turn, just 1 Dead Bloom Predator, 1 Master E, and be able to break that serve through Ancient Hourglass. Really special thing to have in your hand.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the rune discrepancy, right? Because, we stopped at that. The charm coming in here is going to be pretty massive, because it also means you have to immediately react with that Zonia's Hourglass, because you're going to lose control of that battlefield, right? So flipping that over. But the rune discrepancy I was trying to get at was, even with this 1 energy charm, we have so much more to play with for ESR. Things like Dead Bloom are on the table. White Flame Protector are still on the table for them. Whereas Clyde, we're constantly having to pay these power costs. Yes, the Zonia's Hourglass is going to keep our unit alive, but since it's being forced out right here and now because of a charm play, we're just going to lose it immediately, and now you wish you kind of had it later. But we don't have a lot of runes to play with next turn.
Clyde has a Defy in hand. There was a deep thought there in his face of, do I want to counter this charm? I can either let the Hourglass save my E, or I can counter the charm with my Defy, but that's going to cost me a rune. Clyde at 6 runes. If you do that Defy, you go down to 5 and are unable to play White Flame Protector, Dead Bloom Predator, any of those really big plays you really want to be making the next turn, feeling pressured to be like, okay, your charm beats my Hourglass. That's fine. I have to save this Defy for later. Possibly, there's going to be a huge window in a big fight where you get to counter something really important. So, not a huge loss that you can't do it here, but something to be aware of if you're ESR is that tank from Clyde thinking about what to do in that situation. Maybe you can sniff that Defy out.
Love the ganking coming in here from the Hone Yi. Moving over to that God Willow, going to 5 points. And then a Clockwork Keeper. We did pay the additional costs on it. Going to recycle that Calm Room so we can draw a card. Catalyst of Aeons, and a Hide of our own. Going to put that hidden card to protect our own Master Yi over for ESR. All of a sudden, the turntables really have turned in this match because ESR is going to be able to basically match the tempo of what that Zonia's did for Clyde, but on their own foot, while also being up 4 points.
Yeah, having access to the Grove of the God Willow here pretty big, though White Flame Protector, such a massive number that there's not a lot of recourse from ESR other than just, okay, I'll save my E, you get it this turn, we'll have a fight next turn. But now having to get back over that Wuju Bladesman legend ability, so a little bit of a harder combat, needs another trick in hand to get through.
Passing it back, Clyde going up to 2 points. Really prime opportunity here for ESR to go to 7 and threaten holding potentially both battlefields here that Clyde must answer, and only going to really have that White Flame Protector, assuming this E gets dealt with. Predator, Deadbloom Predator seems to be the decision on the choice for the 8-drop that we're going to be playing, and then immediately, again with the focus, gives the on guard. When completely tapped out by Clyde, you know there's not going to be an answer. Great play to get this double conquer here and threaten the hold. Yeah,
in these matchups, having access and open energy to be able to have things like on guard and discipline, really powerful. So when you don't have them, ESR gets to make that play with a ton of confidence, knowing you're going to get to eat that Master Yi, just trading it for an on guard. A great deal on that side of the table.
Absolutely. I think I spotted a charm in Clyde's hand, which makes me think that the only real play here is to move this White Flame up against the Clockwork Keeper and then move that Deadbloom Predator to fight your White Flame being up in the combat. But it's going to cost a bit of power because it does have deflect and for this charm to target it.
Yeah, Clyde does have a lot of cards in hand. Looks like 6, a lot of options available, but you definitely need to get ahead on this board, not allow a hold, and not allow ESR to win that game through that way. In the future, hopefully you have more big monsters to be able to pressure the other side and never let this 7-point hold happen.
No on guard here from ESR that would have helped out to at least get the trade. Catalyst coming through to help replenish some of these rooms, but Clyde being able to at least get a hold here means that the double conquer is going to be a little more difficult for ESR, but one White Flame Protector could do it.
One White Flame for another is what happened in game 1. I can see the same thing happening here. And again, Clyde, without much retribution, the only real thing you can do in those spots is something like a Primal Strength, but only 3 runes up, not able to play a card like that.
It's crazy how thin that margin is, too, because we floated an energy last turn. Because we had to pay the deflect costs, you might as well get the extra, and we would have had it had we not had to go around that deflect cost. And here is the White Flame going in, and that is game 2, going to be going over to ESR. We've got ourselves a match.
One White Flame for another, a trade for a trade. That is how these Master Yi matchups go. You need the big things to break through the Yi battle, Yi legend, and sometimes you just got to be the last one to do it.
A trade as old as time, even. We have Experience Climb, though, coming out here for Clyde, and then Obelisk of Power for ESR on the other side of the table. So accelerated, but we're playing to 9.
Yeah, I will say that Clyde was able to capitalize the Obelisk of Power well in the play. Some decks maybe not the best at that, but getting able to play a Find Your Center on the start, really strong thing to do when you are already playing a long game and you have that advantage through these Dazzling Auroras.
Yeah, and 4 to play with here on the side for ESR. We know cards like Kiana exist in this list. We saw it earlier in game 1. So, you know, can definitely think about playing that on turn 1 going second. Feels pretty good, but the name of the name is we need units, and I'm seeing some pretty expensive ones here on the side of ESR that's not going to help us get points early on if our opponent is just playing some of these ramp spells.
No, these 2 White Flame Protectors, definitely a long game plan. Choosing to fire off a Sabotage early, that's a type of play compared to playing that Kiana, maybe saying something like, I really don't want you to have ramp, but there is not ramp in that hand. That is a very pump spell forward, I would say.
These are the craziest triple discipline Primal Strength for what I believe to be 2 hands for players that are going to play almost no units in these next 2 turns.
I mean, I believe ESR does have a Poro here.
Oh, okay.
He's going to get a Poro in play. Probably Kiana next turn. Probably thrilled to see this hand. It's like, what are you going to be doing with your time? It's a situation of like, do I care about the third discipline? That's probably the, quotes, strongest card of these. Primal Strength, though, fills a very specific role, but when Clyde doesn't have units and is going to take a while to be able to play them, Primal Strength's really hard to leave up. It just costs so much energy. It's much better when you're already a little ahead and you stop your opponent from breaking, but it is a very unique effect. So taking it here from the Sabotage, saying, okay, I know you have as many 2-cost +2s as you want, I'm going to play around that.
I mean, it's basically White Flame on a spell, right? I mean, it costs half as much, essentially, at action speed, but for 1 less, and you don't get the body with it. Like, it makes a lot of sense, but it's such a unique trick that you can play in a deck like this, and, you know, because it costs 4, you do have to show it pretty handedly, but showing 4 is no different than showing up 2 disciplines.
1 discipline, 2 discipline. We'll see if we get a 3rd discipline out of Clyde, just recycling, trying to find a play for next turn. Really needs something big.
Mobilize instead seems to be the draw that we got off of that one. So, you know, just proceeding to get a little bit more of our runes into play. And it looks like that first point is obviously going to be going over to ESR and hopefully a little bit more presence on the board, or it might just be some more ramp of our own with a Find Your Center.
Find Your Center, good. Gets you to that number. That means next turn you can play White Flame Protector and put a big body into play. Pretty important. In addition to that, now you can do something like a Master E and hold up something like that Defy in hand, potentially countering a Discipline or a big effect from Clyde.
Man, and we're going to play to 9? This is going to be a crazy game.
Yeah, this is definitely a bit of a slog for both players. Not a blistering start out the gate. Not exactly a slow one from ESR, but definitely a slower one from Clyde in some ways. But Clyde does have that long game potential. This is the type of battle where the bigger monsters deck, if given enough time, can overcome. However, Clyde needs to find them, and ESR, we know, has them in hand already. So 1 monster in hand worth 2 in the deck.
I love that. No, I'm going to use that. That's so good. I think even showing restraint here, right, not moving the Poro up, because we know if there's going to be any sort of play from Clyde here, if it's just I need to play something, if my hand is not necessarily playing the best cards at this current moment, playing a Honed Yi makes sense. If you played the Poro, you would have just lost it immediately, so we're just going to hold it off for a little bit.
Yeah, and Clyde knows there's this Poro at base, has to think about White Flame Protector. ESR has a nice little, not bluff, unintentionally almost. Well, I can't go in with this Stalwart Poro because you'll probably just kill it with your Yi. It's not even showing that I'm keeping it so I could fight with the White Flame Protector. So it doesn't give Clyde a lot to read off of, but does keep it where he has to be thinking about that situation.
Going to be paying the power cost here for a hidden Zonian's Hourglass. And yeah, I can only imagine that that seems to be the play probably going in here, and it's going to be worth getting the Zonia's Hourglass off of the table. But it does mean that Poro will just end up dying, you know, essentially 1 turn later in the same capacity.
Well, we do know that Clyde has 1 last Discipline in hand. So this is only 10 going into an 8. So that Discipline can cause a trade and kill that Poro, and the Hourglass will, of course, save the Yi. Choosing to keep that Discipline, though, just let the Hourglass, let the Poro live, saying, I don't think the Poro is worth my Discipline. That's fine. Whatever. It's a 2-might unit.
It's true. We all know that that Discipline's at hand still. As we pass it back, of course, using everything that ESR had access to. We're finally getting onto the table, though. 1 point for everybody. Now we're playing like a normal game.
Yeah, that Master E, no reason Discipline, because you're going to get to go in and eat it for free. You know ESR has no runes available, and so situation's the same either way. You get to keep that Discipline and keep that trick available.
Find Your Center, pretty standard here. Hey, look, a second one. So we're going to be channeling up all these runes that Clyde's been paying, at least in some power cost, and drawing some new cards, which, of course, have just really been these ramp spells, you know. And remember, more cards that ESR draws, the Find Your Centers were already unknowns that he didn't know about. And now as we draw and draw more cards, of course, it's even more unknowns. As now the Discipline coming in on your own Master Yi, and then a Charm to bring that White Flame up with no runes available to ESR, it's just going to knock it off the table.
Yeah, this is massive. So now ESR had more White Flame Protectors, would have been able to play one on the first one to get through that E through pretty much anything, but now has no units in play at all. This White Flame Protector gonna need a little bit of support before it can really take over a battlefield, and ESR looks like still has 2 of them, found all of them, so that being a thing that Clyde has turned off, really massive in this situation.
Find Your Center of our own means that we're not going to be playing a Master Yi at all this turn, And instead, we need to find some units that we can use to buff up. And I guess Double Poro will get the job done, but we just are going to find ourselves in a similar situation. If Clyde finds, any sort of like stabilization, some more zoning his hourglass, we're just going to see a similar situation that we saw earlier.
Yeah. Find Your Center really showing its power in these games. Both players ramping quite a bit, especially Clyde's side, but not running out of things to do. Something like this Catalyst of Aeons had me wait until the end of the game where your runes are already out before it cantrips you. But in all of the Find Your Centers, just get to get played, just keep the card flow going.
Absolutely. And then we have a Tasty Faithful coming in. We finally found some units, and we get to play them onto battlefields we already have access to, which then means this Yi with ganking gets to slide over, and all of a sudden the points are going away from ESR as Clyde goes to 4.
Yeah, those White Flame Protectors are good, and they're going to help break through these battlefields. Clyde maybe not going to be playing around the 3rd copy as the game goes on, but they are energy intensive. Both players, tons of runes in play, tons of things they can do, and pretty full hands of things the opponents have to be wary about.
Yeah, similar situation. The Yi is going to get knocked off the table. Poro going to be winning that battle. And now I don't know exactly what units Clyde's going to have access to, as now that champion unit is gone. Going for 2 points for ESR, passing back to Clyde with the hold, going to 5.
Going back to the first turn of the game, when ESR sabotaged and took... Oh, that is...
It's bad. It's here. I didn't lie. I promised. I didn't lie.
That Dazzling Aurora, really massive. Clyde already with an advantage. That's definitely going to give an even more of an advantage. What I was going to say was how much ESR was on top of it taking that Primal Strength, the card that was going to win this fair mid-range battle and stop a White Flame Protector from breaking through another White Flame Protector. But it turns out that's just not what the game's about anymore. Suddenly we have the Aurora and the pressure is on for ESR.
I'm going to ask you a fun question. When was the last time you saw a Dazzling Aurora deck be up in points before they played their Dazzling Aurora?
That's not super often, especially that's something the Misfortune deck in particular is really weak at. They're not good at scoring those points, but Clyde and Master Yi much better at doing that, just playing that champion from the champ zone, able to get in there, gank over. Being a 6-might unit compared to something like Misfortune's 5, a huge difference in getting you those points. Clyde here probably ESR having to think about, okay, I only have so many more White Flame Protectors. You're about to put a lot of numbers in these battlefields over the next couple turns. I have some Tasty Faith folks. What are the things you can hit off this Dazzling Aurora that give me an opportunity to still win? What are the odds you kept in that Stalwart Poro from game 1? I would say pretty low, but you can hope that that's the case.
That is a prayer for sure if you're looking for something like that. But I mean, even hitting this White Flame Protector, like I said earlier, when theorizing when a Dazzling Aurora was eventually going to hit the table in this match, the White Flame doesn't do anything aside from be an 8-might body when you grab it off of the Dazzling, of course. So it is still going to help you obviously win over these Poros, but we still have to deal with now a Tasty Faithful here from ESR and their own White Flame that's already still in their base.
Yeah, this Tasty Faith folk trying to maximize whatever it can do, getting the battle into the other Faith folk. Probably going to do killing the White Flame Protector, leave that, not let you draw the extra card. But that Faith folk threatening a trade with this White Flame Protector if Clyde has no tricks of their own. But I'm not sure it's going to get to hang out there for very long.
Yeah, I think that's why ESR is even going to posture to bring it back to the base, because it's already just going to end up losing straight to that White Flame, and Clyde is already in the lead points. We've got to save as many units as we can, and remember, because like you said, ESR has basically all of these White Flames.
Yeah, you can see another White Flame from Clyde, one White Flame for another, the story of this match, but also just access to things like Defy to counter ESR if any tricks are there, but ESR also has a Defy. Both players... ESR knowing about Clyde's Defy from that early sabotage. So having to keep that in mind and play around it, but no real tricks of ESR's own to even worry about. I think it's probably going to end up with the Defy trading for a Defy at some point, but White Flame for White Flame, big units are what matters. These little tricks, maybe not even super relevant as we crush into these battlefields.
Swinging in for 16 on top of an 8. Tasty Faithful going to give a little bit of value back for ESR, but that's going to be the 6th point here for Clyde. And once this Dazzling goes off, there's no unit that's going to give a double conquer here, so 6 points is where we're going to end up landing for Clyde at the end of the turn, passing back. So there's still room for ESR to catch up because of that battlefield being left alone. I think using one of these Poros to get that point is a lot more meaningful than you just probably losing it right off the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big turn for ESR. Clyde at 6, not enough to win with Asperin's Climb, but really needs to have enough pressure in play because the amount of might Clyde has in the base, pretty high, only going to get higher next turn, going to play a big monster from hand, hit a big monster from the Aurora, really needs to set up a situation where you are scoring and have enough might to crash back in, and if you can't put that into play this turn, it is never getting easier than here.
Absolutely. I was going to say, we have yet to see a single Dead Bloom Predator from either player, but that's not what's coming out. We got that White Flame Protector that we already knew was going to be here. Onto the Poro, into the White Flame of itself. Only up by 2, but here's where I think we're going to see the exchange of these spells that we already kind of know about. The On Guard, ESR did not necessarily anticipate because he only knows about the Defy. So it ends up going to be trading those 2. 8, 10, 12.
That doesn't seem... was there a Master Yi missed? Or a
miss trigger, maybe?
That seems like that Poro should have been a 10, and that Dragon should have been a 12 after the On Guard resolves.
Yeah, I was doing some quick math and I was, wait a minute. But it does still provide the opportunity for this Poro to go in and still get the Conquer. It just means you had to give up a unit, and you will inevitably lose this Poro as well. Passing back to Clyde, and now it is time for Clyde to kind of run away with this game, depending on what we can continue to spend our runes for on our own turn and still continue to grab large units off the top with the Dazzling.
ESR was able to do one thing that is important. Been talking about how even numbers matter a lot. In the Asperin's Climb game, odd numbers matter a lot. If there's any chance of winning this game, it is definitely going 5, 7, 9. But that door is shutting closed here really quickly as Dead Bloom Predator takes that battlefield in Dead Bloom Predator fashion.
Yeah, straight from the hand. And if we're all keeping track at home, of course, ESR is officially out of White Flame Protectors to play from hand. They are already in the trash or on the board. So getting this extra unit up here. And then I think we've missed our Dazzling prog is what we have done. Unless we get a takesies backsies.
Little judge conversation to see what if this was missed. Clyde really wanting to hit this to kind of shore up those battlefields. Choosing to not use the Tasty Fae Folk to defend, saying, I think my 2 8s are big enough. They beat your White Flame. I only need to hold 1 battlefield, and I think I'll probably be able to capture both next turn with just whatever board I have. So not too worried about really trying to put that extra only +4 might into one of these because of the Wuju Bladesman.
Absolutely. Full runes at the disposal for ESR and a plethora of cards in hand. Going over still, I think, for the Dazzling, saying to his opponent that he passed, still wanting to try and get all of his end-of-turn triggers, of course, but they're going to talk it over, of course. And I think, here's my question, even if we don't get this Dazzling, I don't know what ESR has at their disposal, because if we're going to try and contest against these, literally the largest units that exist in these Master Yi decks, we have to play ones of our own, but we must then help them and supplement them with extra cards from our hand, like the Disciplines and the On Guards. But to get the second unit to contest this, either one, that's going to be 8 runes out of our disposal.
Right. I mean, ESR's hand has things like Defies, an Ancient Hourglass, and a Catalyst of Aeons, and those are just not the tools you really need here. There is a Tasty Fae Folk, which you can combine with this Dragon to get in there, get a trade, maybe take 1 battlefield, but I just don't see a way to really capture a second one here unless Clyde decides, I'm going to kill your Tasty Fae Folk and give you a card. But even in those worlds, it seems like ESR kind of drawing dead. In the dream world, maybe there's some primal strengths in that hand that lets you bash through this stuff, but you also know Clyde has some Defies of his own ready to fight back in the counterspell war.
Absolutely. Looks like we're proceeding with the game state. So ESR probably going to use this Catalyst to draw a card, but pay 4, draw 1 is not necessarily the greatest. When it comes to having to use all of our runes at the most efficiency so that we can try and contest this board state at all.
Yeah, and if you're Clyde there, you're like, oh, that's how you're spending your energy? Great, that is all I can hope for. That is exactly what I want to be seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we did end up drawing a Dead Bloom Predator, but as I kind of stated, that would be everything. That's everything left in the tank, at least when it comes to energy this turn.
Yeah, Dead Bloom on its own doesn't even work in the Master Yi mirror due to that, and there's the handshake. Game ending, big monsters. Love big monsters.
If you love playing 8 might units for 8, that's exactly what both of these decks are about. But that's going to be the match in Game 3, going over to Clyde, proceeding even further into this tournament after we've now been able to showcase him twice.